no matter what Black people will do, there have always been systems that have held us back hundreds of years, and now we're just playing catch up at this point. Just like smoking weed, you also have free will. Nobody is telling you to go sit on the couch for fucking 6 hours not doing shit when you could be doing shit. Hi. Nobody is telling you to go and be unproductive after smoking weed. Sorry that there are just productive smokers like me who can smoke weed and go clean their entire house.
No such thing as a life that's better than yours. No such thing as a life that's better than yours. No such thing, no such thing.
Jumbo everyone, welcome back, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about the ghettofication of marijuana and also seeing if it is possible to be successful while also smoking / being a stoner. So let's get started. So what initially made me have this idea in the first place is the fact that I personally smoke weed myself. I have been very open about me smoking weed, and I just want to put this out there that this video is educational. I am not encouraging the smoking of marijuana or for you to go out and do that. I'm just going to simply be talking about the history, the stereotypes put on it, especially with certain different races, and then also kind of the stigma behind it if you're a successful stoner or not. So again, like I said earlier, not to compare myself to other people, but I kind of have to. Being a Black woman myself, I obviously see a lot of the times that my white counterparts will smoke weed and they will almost be praised for it, especially on TikTok. TikTok is an app that I kind of stayed away from when it came to expressing my true self, just because of how strict their policies are and their different, I would just say how strict their rules are when it comes to what you want to post. I've in the past posted just me doing like the tricks and all that other stuff, and I've gotten my video taken down. I've, alluded to it, still got my video taken down, but like on Reels on Instagram, I feel like I have a lot more transparency of what I can do with my content, especially the fact that I smoke weed, and more so promote it on my fitness account. So personally, why I smoke weed, especially when it comes to YouTube, Instagram, those different types of apps, is because one, I explained this a little bit in a Reel video that I made, but I actually used to have my med card. When I was in therapy, I was talking with my therapist and I realized that taking medication is not for me, and seeing the benefits that marijuana has had on me personally, I told her straight up, I was like, hey, I would like it. I know I'm still underage, but I would prefer if you would be able to recommend a med card to me, especially because I was diagnosed with something called CPTSD, which is basically complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and that is formed in childhood. Obviously, over the years, it kind of, developed and festered, and then I found different ways to cope. With not being in therapy, I can kind of see how that's affecting me, but just saying, with being diagnosed with that is one of the factors that you are able to qualify for when it comes to a medical marijuana card. Especially with being in the state of Minnesota. This was almost 2 years ago when I went and was talking and trying to get a med card. A lot of stuff has changed obviously since then. I think back in August of that same year, they legalized marijuana in Minnesota. So to me personally, it was also like, okay, I was more so just having that card just to, I guess, justify me smoking weed in a way, and especially, I guess, have people not look at me as bad because I have a reason, like a medical marijuana card. Granted, I never fully used my medical marijuana card to its extent, but still just having that gave me a peace of mind, knowing that, this was, cleared by my therapist and cleared by an actual doctor, that this was considered my medicine. So I just personally don't believe in taking prescription medication, and that's for me. That's my personal own opinion. And I've made a video about that like way back then, which was so long ago, and it's so crazy to see the growth and the change. But I made a video talking about how doctors were your first drug dealers, and essentially talking about how much profit doctors make off of just prescribing you pills. So that is why I personally don't believe in medication for me. If medication works for you, I'm literally not telling you to stop taking your medication and to smoke weed. That's not what I'm saying at all. What works for some people won't work for other people. Personally, me, smoking weed helps me, and I have the facts to back it up. Even today, I smoked weed, in the morning, right before I ate, and right after I ate my breakfast. I washed Louis, and I cleaned my whole house, and now I'm sitting here filming a YouTube video before I go to work. For me personally, it helps me hone in, helps me really focus on what I want to do or what I need to do, and I almost use it as a reward system. Take for example, say I want to smoke. I'm like, okay, so you're either gonna smoke and then do your homework, or you're gonna do your homework and then smoke. Either or, whatever task needs to get done will get done. And if you want to call me a crackhead or call me a, I'm addicted to weed, say what you want to say. But one, there's no such thing as being addicted to weed. You could be dependent on it, but physically, like, you can't be addicted unless your shit's laced. I don't know what to tell you. But for me personally, I know that I'm a little bit more dependent on it just because of, it being my medication. Imagine you take away someone's anxiety meds from them. How else are they supposed to react? But with me personally, like when I went to Bali for 8 days and had to basically be sober for 10, I was like, I'm never doing that again. I took my first tea break that I needed to take when I was in Bali, and I took like, a 10-day tea break, and I was like, wow, I took my break. I see why I like smoking weed, and I'm going to continue smoking weed. So now I'm going to be going over the history of marijuana, and if you see me looking down, that's just because I'm reading off of my computer. I want to make sure that I do this as thorough as possible so you guys can understand how we went from this place to this place within, I guess, like the span of 200 years. Okay? So, and this is coming from pbs.org, so it is a reliable source. I know that. Thank you very much. So when looking at the website, the first thing that comes up is talking about the years the 1600 through the 1890s. And that was when the domestic production of hemp was encouraged. And during this time, legislation back in 1619, the Virginia Assembly passed legislation requiring every farmer to grow hemp. Hemp was allowed to be exchanged as legal tender in Pennsylvania, Virginia, and Maryland. So this is just showing that, throughout time on how popular it became and even required for every farmer to grow some. Back then everybody was, puffing. Just kidding. And then it also goes on to say domestic production flourished until the Civil War, when imports and other domestic materials replaced hemp for many purposes. In the late 19th century, marijuana became a popular ingredient in many medicinal products and was sold openly in public pharmacies. So they had dispensaries back then is what you're saying. During the 19th century, hashishes, use became a fad in France and also to some extent in the US. I just want to make sure I'm doing this right, y'all, so bear with me. So then in 1906, the Pure Food and Drug Act was, I guess, whatever. And this required labeling of any cannabis contained in over-the-counter remedies. So then we go to the 1900s through the 1920s, and then it says Mexican immigrants introduced recreational use of marijuana leaf. After the Mexican Revolution in 1910, Mexican immigrants flooded the U.S., introducing to American culture the recreational use of marijuana. The drug became associated with the immigrants, and the fear and prejudice about the Spanish-speaking newcomers became associated with marijuana. Anti-drug campaigners warned against the encroaching marijuana menace, and terrible crimes were attributed to marijuana and the Mexicans who used it. So obviously there was a racial bias when it came to marijuana, and this is even like what we see now, a lot of black and brown people catching the flack for essentially smoking marijuana, even though a lot of their white counterparts were doing the exact same thing and were still reaping benefits throughout society. So then during the 1930s is when the real fear of marijuana came about. During the Great Depression, massive unemployment increased public resentment and fear of Mexican immigrants, escalating public and governmental concern about the problem of marijuana. This instigated a flurry of research which linked the use of marijuana with violence, crime, and other socially deviant behaviors, primarily committed by the racially inferior or underclass communities. By 1931, 29 states had outlawed marijuana. In the 1930s, the creation of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics was created, and Harry J. Anslinger was the first commissioner of the FBN and remained in that post until 1962. In 1932, Uniform State Narcotic Act was, I guess, signed. Concern about the rising use of marijuana and research linking its use with crime and other social problems created pressure on the federal government to take action. Rather than promoting federal legislation, the FBN strongly encouraged state governments to accept responsibility responsibility for control of the problem by adopting the Uniform State Narcotic Act. 1936, there's the Reefer Madness. This propaganda film, Reefer Madness, was produced by the French director Louis Gasnier. The Motion Pictures Association of America, composed of the major Hollywood studios, banned the showing of any narcotics in films. In 1937, the Marijuana Tax Act was adopted. After a lurid national propaganda campaign against the evil weed, Congress passed the Marijuana Tax Act. The statute effectively criminalized marijuana, restricting possession of the drugs to individuals who paid an access tax for certain authorized medical and industrial uses. And then continue just going down. It just continues talking about how, especially at LaGuardia in 1944, the New York Academy of Medicine issued an extensive research report declaring, contrary to earlier research and popular belief, the use of marijuana did not include violence, insanity, or sex crimes, or lead to addiction to other drugs. This is exactly what I'm talking about in terms of stating that marijuana cannot cause an addiction to marijuana. That makes sense. I'm just gonna read, oh my god, there's so much. We're gonna keep going through this because we're gonna read the whole history together so we can fully understand why I'm talking about this in the first place. 1940s, hemp for victory during World War II. Imports of hemp and other materials crucial for producing marine cordage, parachutes, and other military necessities became scarce. In response, the U.S. Department of Agriculture launched its Hemp for Victory program, encouraging farmers to plant hemp by giving out seeds and granting draft deferments to those who stay home and grow hemp. By 1943, American farmers registered in the program harvested 375,000 acres of hemp. Then come the 1950s and 60s. So it says stricter sentencing laws. Enactment of federal laws which set mandatory sentences for drug-related offenses, including marijuana. A first offense marijuana possession carried a minimum sentence of up to 2 to 10 years with a fine of up to $20,000. Who can afford that during this time? It's also to see how demonized marijuana was at this time, because $20,000 and up to 2 to 10 years for a first time offense while there's rapists out there getting less time is insane. Insane. Then in the 1960s, marijuana use popular in counterculture. A changing political and cultural climate was reflected in more lenient attitudes towards marijuana. Use of the drug became widespread in white upper middle class. I want y'all to remember that. Reports commissioned by President Kennedy and Johnson found that marijuana did not induce violence nor lead to the use of heavier drugs. Policy towards marijuana began to involve considerations of treatment as well as criminal penalties. In the 1968, the creation of the Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs was created, and this was a merger of the Food and Drug Administration and also the FBN and the Bureau of Dangerous Drugs. All of them just combined, okay? Just think of it like that. And it's also interesting that in 1968, this was formed. What also was passed in 1968? The Civil Rights Act. Interesting. So I'm just gonna skip a little bit more. It just basically talks about how it's differentiated from other drugs. The repeal of mandatory minimum, which is basically saying that no matter what the crime was, if you already have 1 to 2 strikes, the third strike you get a mandatory minimum, no stopping that, and you will stay in jail until you serve at least 85% of your sentence. Is that not fucking insane? It is. So basically we're talking about how it went from demonizing marijuana to then criminalizing it to then specifically targeting certain groups of people. And this is where I want to talk about the war on drugs. If you don't know what the war on drugs is, it's basically a campaign, slogan, whatever, during around the 1970s, 1980s, when these drugs started to become more popular, and a lot of the times the presidents didn't know what to do in order to stop them. So instead of them really saying it's a war on black people and a war on trying to, I guess, stop all of the progress that the black community had made thanks to the Black Panthers, they're like, how can we reverse all this? Oh, I know. We're going to introduce crack into the black community, and we're going to make it so illegal that if you get caught with it, we're just going to simply throw you in jail. Doesn't even matter. Doesn't matter if you're smoking it. Doesn't matter if you're selling it. We're throwing you in jail. So obviously we know that there is a target based on who the war on drugs is targeting. Even when doing my research, it was very interesting to see that during the war on drugs, white people were using cocaine and black people were using crack. Crack cocaine was a lot cheaper than regular just cocaine, but it still had about 1/10 of it mixed in it, so it's still counted as crack cocaine. What also kind of pisses me off and throws me off is when you look up the war on drugs, a fucking white band that was formed in basically 2005 pops up. Bitch, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the history on the motherfucking war on drugs and how that impacted my community, not your little white boy band. It also reminds me of how the Black Panther movie, obviously we know that was a comic or whatever, but the Black Panthers way back then was, you know, this group that had a lot of positivity towards uplifting the Black community. And just so many years later, when doing research, when you look up the Black Panther, the movie pops up instead of the, you know, the group. So it's kind of just like almost desensitizing people to the history that used to happen. So when they look it up, another thing pops up and they don't think about the true history behind it. Again, Richard Nixon and his racist ass increased funding for the DEA in order to, I guess, catch more people selling drugs. I don't fucking know. So basically, what's the difference between crack and cocaine? Like I said earlier, one's a white drug, one's a black drug. That is as simple terms I can put it in for y'all to really understand that crack was introduced to the Black community in order to basically reverse all of the efforts that was made by the Black Panthers. Don't even get me started on COINTELPRO, because I can genuinely make a whole video within itself talking about that and talking about how no matter what Black people will do, there have always been systems that have held us back hundreds of years, and now we're just playing catch up at this point. While doing my research, again, Elrich was even quoted saying, "We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or Black, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and the Blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities, we could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did." Reagan continued the push when in 1986, Congress passed the Anti-Drug Abuse Act, which established mandatory minimum sentences for certain drug offenses. This law was later heavily criticized as having racist ramifications because it allocated longer prison sentences for offenses involving the same amount of crack cocaine used more often by Black Americans as powder cocaine used more often by white Americans. 5 grams of crack triggered an automatic 5-year sentence, while it took 500 grams of powder cocaine to merit the same sentence. If that doesn't prove right there the war on drugs, I don't know what to tell you. 5 grams of crack cocaine gets you 5 years in prison versus 500 grams of cocaine will get you the same. 5 grams versus 500. We know what they were doing. This was used more by Black people and this one was used more by white people. Obviously, they're not going to want to throw a whole bunch of white people in jail, so that's why I said earlier, cocaine was the white drug, crack is the black drug. Obviously, like it has said, the popularity of weed has gone up, and since then, the stigma behind it is still kind of the same. I remember even that commercial of the girl who was like sunken into the couch basically and saying she doesn't want to do anything ever since she started smoking pot. And I remember those commercials, like being a young child, being influenced that easily. And I think just like there just needs to be more education instead of fear mongering around certain drugs, which will also make it so people use their critical thinking skills when doing these fucking drugs. But like I said, that stigma will continue to stay around, especially by non-smokers, because they will never understand the lifestyle being lived by people who smoke weed. There's this automatic belief that if you smoke weed, you're automatically lazy. And just like smoking weed, you also have free will. Nobody is telling you to go sit on the couch for fucking 6 hours not doing shit when you could be doing shit. Hi. Nobody is telling you to go and be unproductive after smoking weed. Sorry that there are just productive smokers like me who can smoke weed and go clean their entire house. Not everybody is the same, and like I've said, smoking weed is not for everybody. If you know it makes you paranoid, if you know it makes you lazy, if you know it makes you unmotivated, why are you doing it? And that's also where I talk about there's a difference between being dependent on it, using it for your medication, and using it as a reward. The main reason why I say the ghettofication, I don't know if you guys have seen on TikTok where that girl was talking about the ghettofication of Lululemon. I didn't even look into that because I don't got time, because a bitch doesn't even shop at Lululemon. What the fuck do I look like paying fucking $120 for a pair of leggings? You're insane. You're insane. But I say the ghettofication because look at athletes as an example. Do y'all see how back then during, what was it? It wasn't the Olympics. I'm not sure. Whatever situation it was Sha'Carri Richardson, and essentially she got caught smoking weed. She was literally like barred, blacklisted, whatever you want to call it, for so long. People were talking so much shit on her. Yet there were other athletes who literally had weed in their system and they weren't penalized penalized at all. So that's where I want y'all to make it make sense. That some people, especially white athletes, are able to do things like that, but yet when a black person does it and they're top performing, it's not even a performance enhancing drug. It's literally what is it called? There's a stimulant and the fuck is it? A depressant. Weed is literally a depressant. So that's where I'm just like, anything that y'all see that black people can do while doing something, y'all will penalize them for doing it, even though there's white people doing it all the time. All the time. It doesn't matter what you did, it matters who you are when you did it. Therefore, the ghettofication is they associate marijuana with black people being lazy and doing all this other stuff, and yet there are white people who are doing the same exact thing, yet they're getting praised for it. This also kind of ties into like the whole canna mom culture, where it's moms smoking weed, and I just think that it's crazy that black moms will get so much flack for saying that, you know, they go spark up and then they'll go and make their kids a whole fucking gourmet ass meal and then color with them. Yet for the white person, they'll smoke, they'll, you know, whatever, and people will be like, oh my god, you seem so fun, that seems like so much fun, I don't know why I didn't think of that, da 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 da. Hello? Why do they get praised and they don't? So it's just like, it's cool when they do it, it's a problem when I do it. That doesn't make sense. There's also this like common culture of like rappers and artists and all of them like smoking in their music videos, smoking just in general, and sipping lean and doing other drugs and all that other stuff. And it's almost like they're seen as unprofessional, but because they have the fan base that they do, it's like, how can you call them unprofessional just because they smoke weed? And that's like another thing I want to talk about is like smoking weed versus you bitches who are doing cocaine every weekend. I don't want to fucking hear it. And then on top of drinking, y'all are drinking every single weekend or even every day. Is anybody worried about their health? Is anybody worried about waking up the next fucking morning? Like, you know what I mean? Y'all are drinking every single day. Your liver. But y'all are worried about me smoking weed? Baby girl, no. So that's what I'm saying. It's like these artists, it's almost weird if they don't smoke or if they don't promote some type of, you know, drug activity in a sense, because it's like that is almost a qualification needed in order to like, you know, be that type of rapper, that type of artist. I just want to embody the mindset of Snoop Dogg, not giving a fuck, still smoking wherever he fucking goes, and still able to get brand deals. I've kind of talked about this a little bit before, but I feel like some brands will specifically not sponsor me just because I smoke weed, and I think with being a black woman, it adds another layer on top of that. And then also the amount that I show my ass on my channel, that accounts into it too. First of all, I don't know what y'all want me to do about that because it's not my fault. My account name is literally Reese's Dump. I want to have a dump truck. That is the whole premise of my fucking account. Two, yes, I'm gonna show my ass. And it's just very interesting. This is a whole nother YouTube video that I could get into about this. But it's just interesting to me that like when a white girl has a fat ass, all the girls are like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. When a black girl has a fat ass, why do I attract all the fucking creeps? Please. And obviously I know that there are black girls out there that have a following, that have like a woman-based following and all that stuff. But like that's something that I'm trying to work on, okay? I know that I've been showing my ass. That ain't nothing new. Is it gonna change? Probably not, because I want to show the other girlies how to build a dump truck. But these men be fucking trying it. So that's where I'm just like, I think in a sense, like me smoking weed, me being a black woman, me showing my ass, brands don't want to work with me, but that I don't want to work with a brand who doesn't want me for me. And like I said, I want to emulate the mindset of Snoop Dogg, doing whatever the fuck he wants to do and knowing that he'll still have a job at the end of the day because he's Snoop Dogg. And that's where I'm saying like I will create a name for myself to the point where me smoking weed, bitch, ain't nobody give a fuck about that. We want you for you. And that's where I'm also just saying like, y'all didn't want me now. Why do you want me in the future when I have all this to fucking offer? I also just want to say a lot of your influencers, a lot of your fave influencers smoke weed. They just keep it a fucking secret. They do that shit in their own time, under wraps. And that's up to them. Like literally that's what I tell people. I'm like, it's your choice if you want to smoke weed or not. But a lot of them know that smoking weed, especially publicly, will, I guess in a way, lean more towards not getting sponsored. And that's where it's like, you know, a lot of them just choose to do it in the privacy of their own home, and to each their own. I don't give a fuck. Nobody's forcing you to post about you smoking weed. But that's where it's just like, for me, it just kind of sucks because I'm honest about the extracurricular activities that I do, and it's almost like getting punished in a way. But like I've said multiple times, I don't want to be with a brand who doesn't want me for me, and with me comes smoking weed. I've said that many times. This is kind of why I talk about like the ghettofication of smoking weed, because it almost seems like, you know, if you smoke weed, if you are open about it but also show how successful you are at the same time, it kind of confuses people. It's like, okay, well, how is she able to still get all this shit done while still smoking weed? And I'm like, baby girl, I'm just about that life. No, but genuinely, like, there's this stigma around if you smoke weed, you're lazy, you aren't able to achieve anything, this and this and that. But I'm just like, who said that? Who said that? Who ever said that? So it's, you know, it's a little frustrating being a black woman, being so open about smoking weed. But again, I will attract the community that I want to attract, being the 100% authentic version of myself, and knowing that I am not going to change just for some money. Like, money will change me in a good way because I'll be able to invest in myself in a good way. But in terms of like, oh, we'll give you $2,000 for you to delete all your videos of you smoking weed, and you can be a sponsorship, but you have to delete everything of you smoking weed. It can't be. No, you get me for me, period. And like I said, don't get me started on alcohol versus weed, because that could be a whole other separate video within itself. And I could rant about that for probably over an hour, just because of like the stigma behind me smoking weed and niggas out here drinking every fucking day. Are we not worried about their health? More specifically, this begs the question, is it possible to be successful while smoking weed and being black? I obviously say yes to that, but it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of proving people wrong in order to do so. I say this because, yes, I am in college. I'm a junior in college, repeating my junior year for ASL Interpreting. Obviously, I know I will not be smoking before I interpret. That just won't work out well, but it will be something that I'll be able to do, you know, on my off time. But with saying that, I am saying yes, it is possible to be successful and smoke weed at the same time. We're already black. That already adds to the fucking stigma. So you might as well do whatever the fuck you want to do. Just saying. Like I said, there's so much stigma around smoking weed. There's a ghettofication of smoking weed, how people perceive you when you tell them that you smoke weed. It's obviously became a lot more popular, and, you know, people have adapted to the culture. But when it comes to brands and, you know, sponsorships, for me personally, I just want to make it clear that I in no way find myself changing myself for a brand, and that brand will have to want me for me. They will see, damn, she's a cool ass bitch, damn, she's an interpreter, damn. They will literally look at me smoking weed and throw that shit to the side, because like I said, y'all niggas are doing cocaine on the weekend and keeping it a secret. I'm just smoking weed and telling everybody about it. There's a big difference. Anyways, I think I've done enough ranting for today, and I hope y'all enjoyed this video, and I'll see y'all in my next one. Bye, y'all.
Was the last word.